Hello, hello, and happy Friday. Good to see you again. Glad that you stopped by. This is Handle It Handbags. My name is PA, and as we do every Friday, we discuss women of color, women who have made awesome accomplishments throughout life. Okay? Some of the greatest known unknowns ever known. Before we get started, we ask that you subscribe. Down below, see the box down there? It says subscribe. That would be for us. This way, we can come to you whenever it's convenient for you so that you can view us and learn about these sisters out here who are so powerful. Well, today we're going to talk about a sister going by the name of Edmona Lewis. Yes, this sister is a sculptor. Before we get into her, we're going to show you the bag that was named in honor of Edmona. This today is going to be a clutch bag. Look at this attractive bag. Isn't that fine leather? Look at that leather. That's the front of the bag. This would be the back of the bag. It's like a mustard color mixed with a caramel, and it is lined with another type of a brownish color. And then a fine line of black traces out this pattern. I think it's an awesome pattern. Look at that. This bag is a clutch. And you know how we sisters love to carry a clutch. Well, a great many of us love to carry a clutch. I know some sisters in other cities, they say, but we can't walk the street with it. Well, in cities where you drive more frequently, and you cute too, and you just want to show off, that's when you bring out your clutch. This clutch is fully lined. That is the inside of the flap of the clutch. That's the back side, the inside. Once we open this awesome clutch, zip, zip. As usual, we'll take out the tissue paper so we can see this wonderful handbag. The back side, the front side. Fully lined, 2 interior pockets, and yes, this can be yours. You can be the biggest show off out there. Wonderful, wonderful bag. Of course, this bag can be found on www.handleithandbags.com. All right? Thank you. We'll let her sit there for a moment while we discuss the artist of the day, who goes by the name again as Edmona Lewis. And just to give you an idea about this powerful sister, she was kidnapped, beaten, and left to die. Edmona Lewis, she's a talented artist with both African and Native American ancestry. She refused to abandon her dreams. In the winter of 1862, a white mob had attacked her because of reports that she poisoned 2 fellow Oberlin College students, drugging their wine with Spanish fly. She had some intentions if she did that, right? Battered and struggling to recover the serious injuries, she went to court and won an acquittal. Though these details are apparently true, after becoming an internationally known sculptor, Lewis used the threads of both truth and imagination to embroider her life story, artfully adding to her reputation as a unique person and a sculptor who refused to be limited by the narrow expectations of her contemporaries. Okay. Lewis shattered expectations about what female and minority artists could accomplish. It was very much a man's world, says the museum's curator. Lewis, she says, really broke through every obstacle, and there's still remarkably little known about her. It's only recently that they placed a year after her death had come to light in 1907 in London, because she actually was born in Greenbush, New York in 1844. She died in London, England in 1907. Just in case you're out there going to see her art, she's still moving like she's still living. The artist proved to be particularly savvy about winning over supporters in the press and in the world by altering her life story to suit her audience. Everything that we know about her really must be taken with a grain of salt, a pretty hefty grain of salt, because in her own time she was a master of her own biography. Lewis shifted her autobiography tales into win support, but she did not welcome reactions of pity and condescension. Excuse me. Okay, some praise me because I'm a color girl, and I don't want that kind of praise, she said. I rather would point to my defects, and that will teach me something. Lewis's life was profoundly uncommon. They named her Wildfire at birth. She apparently had a partially Chippewa mother and a Haitian father. So Lewis claimed that her mother was fully blood Chippewa, and I'm pronouncing this American Indian name, I hope is correct, but there is disagreement of this at this point. The parentage of her apart and added to her exotic image. Her father labored as a gentleman's servant while her mother made Native American souvenirs that they sold to artists. Both parents died when she was young. Lewis was reared by maternal aunts in upstate New York. She had a half brother who traveled west during the gold rush and earned enough money to finance her education, a rare opportunity for a woman in a minority in the 19th century. But she was welcomed at the progressive Oberlin College in 1859. But her time there was not easy. Even after being cleared of poisoning charges, Lewis was unable to finish her last term at Oberlin, following allegations that she had stolen paintbrushes and a picture frame. Despite dismissal of the theft charges, the college asked her to leave with no chance to complete her education and receive her degree. So she moved to Boston again with financial assistance from her half brother, and there she met several abolitionists, such as William Lloyd Garrison, who supported her work. Now, unlike the white male sculptors, she could not ground her work in the study of anatomy. Such classes traditionally were just limited to white men. However, a few white women paid to get background in the subject that Lewis, of course, could not afford the classes, and she engaged her craft without the training of her peers. Possessed sculpture, Edward Brackett, acted as her mentor and helped her to set up her own studio. But her first success came as an artist when she had the sale of her medallions that she made of clay and plaster. These sculptured portraits featured images of renowned abolitionists. And for Native Americans, she's an advocate for Native Americans, but her first real financial success came in 1864 when she created a bust for the Civil War Colonel Robert Shaw, a white officer who had commanded the 54th Massachusetts Infantry, composed of African American soldiers. And okay, so moving on. So from Boston, she traveled to London, Paris, and Florence and decided to live her life out in Rome. She followed American sculptor Harriet Hosmer, and she took Lewis under her wing and tried to help her succeed. And traditional sculptors at that time, they were only working out of stone. They paid Roman stone crafters to produce their works in marble, and led this to some questions about whether the true artists were the original sculptors of stone crafters. Well, she often lacked the money to hire help to chisel most of her own figures. Okay, while she was in Rome, though, she created the Death of Cleopatra, the largest and the most powerful work that she poured more than 4 years of her life into this sculpture. At times, she ran low on money to complete the monolithic work, so she returned to the United States where she sold smaller pieces to earn the necessary cash. In 1876, though, she shipped almost 3,000-pound sculpture to Philadelphia so that the piece could be considered by the committee selecting works for a centennial exhibition, and she went there too. She feared that the judges would reject her work, but to her great relief, the panel ordered a placement in Gallery K of Memorial Hall. Apparently set aside the American Artist Guidebook citations for the work, noted that this is for sale. Some people were blown away by it. They thought it was a masterful marble sculpture, says Lemony. Others disagreed, criticizing this graphic and disturbing image of the moment that Cleopatra killed herself. Once the artist Clark, in 1878, the effects of the death are represented in such skill as to be absolutely repellent, and it's a question whether the statue of the ghastly characteristics of this one does not overstep the bounds of legitimate art. The moment when the ASP's poison did its job was too graphic for some to see. So as time went on, so after the Philadelphia exhibition ended, Cleopatra began a new life. and Odyssey, they removed the sculpture from the art world for more than a century. She appeared in Chicago Interstate Industrial Expo, and with no buyer in sight within the art world, she journeyed into the realm of the mundane. Then, legendary wanderers before her faced many trials and extended the episode of mistaken identity as she went east with multiple roles. Over the years, what happened is it went to a racetrack. Her artwork went to a racetrack in Forest Park, Chicago suburb. Well, from there, over the years, the racetrack became a golf course, a Navy munitions site, finally a bulk mail center, in all kinds of weather, the legal Egyptian decayed as she served as a little more than obstacle to whatever activity that was occurring around it, which is so funny. The early 1990s Historical Society donated the sculpture to the Smithsonian, and Chicago Conservator has hired to return it to its original form based on a single surviving photograph. Although the museum had no plans for further restoration, they hope that the digital photo projects at institutions around the world someday will unearth the images of sculptor's original state. Well, as time went on, while many of her works did not survive from Lewis's pieces now can be found at the Howard University Gallery of Art, Detroit Institute of Arts, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and the Baltimore Museum of Art. Lewis recently became the subject of the Google Doogle that pictures her working on the death of Cleopatra. Also, the New York Times featured her on July 25th in 2018 in its overlooked No More series of obituaries written about women and minorities whose lives had been ignored by newspapers because of the cultural prejudice that revered white men actually. Well, I'm so glad we learned something different about someone else powerful. I hadn't hit on anyone in the art world before, so I'm really glad to be able to do that because being a lover of the art world myself, I just needed to show off. Again, this is the bag named in honor of Edmona, and that's Edmonia, in case I'm mispronouncing it, Lewis. Again, she and more information can be found on www.handbagz with a Z on the end.com. Once again, we thank you for visiting. Hope you return again because I just love to share these wonderful stories about these sisters of color. Have a great remainder of the weekend, and hope to see you again next week. Thank you much.